Advocacy and Education for Mennonite Central Committee, U.S. One of my jobs is to encourage Congress to envision and to pass, to support policies that align with MCC's commitment to be in right relationship with the earth, with each other, and with God. So that's been a challenge over the past year, but we continue to work at it. Another aspect of my work, which is far more life-giving, is a campaign called Climate Action for Peace, which I might have time to share a little bit more about towards the end. This speaking tour, which is called Global Voices Speaking Tour, is one of the activities we dreamed up for this Climate Action for Peace campaign. The idea behind this speaking tour is that over the years, MCC has heard from our international partners around the world stories of severe droughts, of unpredictable floods, of crop failures, of violence that's increasing because of resource depletion. And we have partners almost, in every place around the world, and we really started to connect the dots, and we're hearing similar things, changes in people's natural environment and weather and their ability to really grow food and sustain their families, everything becoming more and more challenging. And so out of all of those stories, we just became convinced that there is this global phenomena of climate change, and that we need to respond. And we need to respond in one part by really bringing those stories firsthand from our partners internationally to communities, Anabaptist communities here in the US, so that we can be renewed and energized in our own actions, of our own climate actions that we know can support peace around the world, and also so we can be a prayerful witness for our global neighbors as they are experiencing quite a bit of changes and suffering during this time. So it's out of all that we bring you this Global Voices Speaking Tour. We arrived in California, in Los Angeles, at Pasadena Mennonite Church on February 6th, and we have been traveling ever since then. We were in Fresno, California. We went to Fresno Pacific University. I don't know if anybody has been out there or knows students that are there. Okay, yes. We went up to Oregon. We were at Portland Mennonite Church and Albany Mennonite Church. We met wonderful folks from Mennonite Retirement Village. We traveled to Colorado. We were in Colorado Springs at Bethel Congregation and then Boulder Mennonite Congregation. And I should say from all of these places, people said, please tell so-and-so in Kansas, in Goshen, in Ohio that we said hello, because there are networks of connections across. So we bring those greetings to you all. We were in Kansas, in Newton, in North Newton. We were at Heston College and Bethel College and Showalter Villa, Retirement Villa. We traveled to Goshen, and we were at Bethany Christian School. We were at Goshen College. We were at Yellow Creek Mennonite Church. Then we arrived here, and yesterday we were just in town here at the MCC Material Resources Center yesterday. Today, we drive through various snowy conditions all the way to Washington, D.C. We'll spend a day there tomorrow, and then we finalize our tour in Pennsylvania, speaking at different places there, so in Akron, Pennsylvania. So I would like to welcome our two speakers. We're going to spend time walking the land that they walk and hearing the stories that they are hearing on a daily basis and learning more about the challenges that our international partners are experiencing and also how they are building resilience, both in regards to conflict. So how are they creating more opportunities for peace and strength for peace in their communities, and also in their dealing with and adapting to the different changes in their natural environment. So we'll hear from David Waiswa. He's from Uganda. He is in charge of 6-country programs in East Africa and Sahel region in Uganda. He covers topics like peace and advocacy and monitoring and evaluation there. He has worked previously with the International Rescue Committee, and he co-founded an organization in Uganda called the Center for Development and Coexistence in Uganda. And he has a little baby boy. You'll get a picture of Isaiah a little later. And Dr. Rahaman is from Bangladesh, and he has been working with MCC for over 22 years, contributing to socioeconomic development in very vulnerable rural communities there. He has a doctorate in agriculture entomology from the Bangladesh Agricultural University, and he is a proud father of 2 children. You'll also meet them in his presentation. So we would like to welcome David, and let's just give a round of applause for David. Thank
you. Good morning. How are we feeling today? Very well. Again, my name is David Waiswa, and yes, I'm from Uganda. I don't want to go about my title. It's a very long one. But I'm very glad to be here. So I promised Christine there that I'll only stop telling this story when I see snow. So this is my first experience this morning seeing snow. And all the way from where were we at? That should have been in Portland, Oregon, as we headed out to Kansas and Denver, coming all the way up to Indiana. She had promised me, you're going to see a lot of snow, you know. Unfortunately, this is the first morning that I'm seeing snow. And we bought these very heavy jackets, snow jackets that would probably help us go through this weather. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to put mine on, not even this morning, so it's not yet that cold. But at least I get to see some snow. But again, that is what climate change does. It makes the weather pretty unpredictable in many ways and in many contexts. But for the places that we come from, again, some of the effects are very devastating, and they get to affect people's lives and livelihoods. So my presentation this morning will be focused on climate security in Africa. And basically, by climate security, I'll be talking about the intersection between climate change and conflict, and how climate change drives conflict within some of the places that MCC works, but also generally where we come from. Just before I start, I want to introduce you to my little but growing family there. With me is my wife, Lillian, and right beside us is our lovely young man, Isaiah. He's 8 months, pretty grown for these past 2 weeks. I'm also surprised and pleasingly surprised at how fast they grow, but yes, quite bigger than that by now. Yes. So just where we work, so MCC, that is pretty small, but I'll just mention a few facts there. So MCC works in Africa, and Africa, again, just to emphasize, it's not a country, it's a continent with about 53 countries or so. And MCC works in 15, currently 14 actively, of those countries. And many of the countries that we do work in are countries that are conflict affected, but also have, climate disasters going on. Those range from countries like Nigeria, they range from countries like South Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, all the way down to Mozambique. And by conflict affected, I mean that some of them have active conflicts going on, or they might have climate disasters going on in another way, but then also host refugees that are coming. Some of them host refugees that are coming from countries that are conflict affected. So just a bit of facts. I don't know, that might still be too small for some of us to read, but I'll read it out. So just a bit of facts about climate change and conflict is one that the highest emitters of greenhouse gases include countries like our own here, countries like Russia, countries like Japan, and we are basically talking about the most developed countries. And these have large populations, heavy industry, and high fossil fuel use. Most climate vulnerable countries include more of the least developed countries, and these include countries like Chad, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Mozambique. It has a very devastating disaster going on with floods in Mozambique right now. And these face rising sea levels, droughts, floods, stronger storms, while contributing very little to global emissions. But just to explain the term climate vulnerable countries is that we all do face climate change, or we all do face the effects of climate change in different ways. Fortunately, for some of our countries, we are able to adapt. We are able to probably, have the social safety nets. We might have, for example, crop insurance for some of us that are farmers. We might have irrigation when there is droughts, but that doesn't happen very much for many of the countries that we come from, where people rely mostly on agriculture and have limited resources to adapt. And by agriculture, we are talking more of subsistence agriculture that is basically, as a source of livelihood, and then people basically sell off whatever excess it is just to make a bit of some money. And then climate change does increase the risk of conflict by reducing food and water supplies. It does damage economies, it forces people to migrate, and the scarcity of resources in many contexts has led to competition and violence, while disasters also weaken governments and create instability that armed groups oftentimes exploit. So the countries that emit the most greenhouse gases are usually not the ones that suffer the worst impacts again. And I'll just take us and show us a few pictures from a Sudanese refugee camp in Chad. So Sudan has one of the worst humanitarian crises that has been ongoing for the past 3 years. It has been termed as the largest and fast-growing humanitarian crisis, with over 14 million people that have been displaced in just 3 years. So I visited Chad, which is one of the neighboring countries that is hosting refugees from Sudan, and we do have a program that is ongoing there. And right there in that picture, you can see a long line of jerry cans. So jerry cans are basically water containers because, again, people don't have piped water, so they have to pick water from a particular water point and take home for use. But there are no people there. And why? Because there is basically no water. And what usually happens in this context is that there are host communities, people that have welcomed refugees into their communities. But again, because of the limited resources, we are saying, well, now you're taking our water, you're taking our resources. Trees have been cut down for firewood, but also to make shelters. And it really becomes an issue, and we have seen so many, fights starting out of this violence, coming out of these limited resources, again, in this context. There again is just a picture of young children playing around, again, some water containers that have been thrown around there. And again, no water, no people, so it really becomes an issue in many of these contexts, again. So just to show you a bit, or just to share a bit of more about this, that is a picture of women and children. And in many contexts, climate change and conflict does affect women and children disproportionately. So about 80% of the displaced populations comprise basically of women and children. And that has been the case for many of the places that we work in, but also basically generally looking at data. And what does data show us? That more countries are reporting both conflict and disaster displacements over time. So that is a graph showing us from 2009 to 2024, and basically globally all but 4 of the 49 countries and territories where conflict displacements were identified also did record disaster displacements. I'm guessing that number will be high as and when we receive 2025 data. But in Africa, all the 23 countries that did report conflict displacements also recorded disaster displacements, and many times affecting the same people. So what are we doing as MCC? Basically, we are doing what we call adaptation approaches, supporting people to adapt to the changes of climate change. And one way we are doing that is holistic approaches to climate security again, in the sense that we are trying to address problems as one. So what we call an integrated approach or multi-sectoral approach, that we are going to come in a community and look at conflict, look at livelihood, and try to handle all those issues at the same time in one project, which initially wasn't the case. Would come in and probably have a peace building project separately from a livelihood project, probably in different communities, but that even the communities have demanded. You go and talk about it and they're like, well, you're talking about peace, but we need food. So that left a gap, and we are trying to address that way. Two is that we are looking at governance, peace building, and early warning. So in some of the contexts, again, we just can't do anything more so in the sense of livelihood, and we need to first address the conflict situation in some of the places. So what we do is strengthen, again, policies and systems that help prevent and resolve conflict, but also manage and protect shared and natural resources. And then when we look at early warning, basically we are looking at smoke detectors of conflict. Basically, how can we be able to tell? So we create this, for example, the picture we are seeing there is from Chad, and our partner there does look at these, they form these interfaith committees. Chad is one country that is divided along religious lines. So they look at all this, they come up with these interfaith committees that are able to look at the conflict drivers or anything that could drive conflict within a certain context, and they're able to report that, and it's addressed as a conflict before it becomes violent. Then the other thing that we are looking at is environmental rehabilitation and enhancement. So where basically we take cognizance of the fact that some places have been degraded, so we come in and plant trees and support the rehabilitation of environments. And that is a picture of one of the places that we are rehabilitating. It was taken 2 years back, and currently, as you can see, that is a group of women that has supported, and they've been empowered to, come up with these nursery tree beddings, and they've been able to plant these trees in so many of the places, the community, schools, the churches, and basically just community spaces. And this project also does address structural violence by empowering women. Gender-based violence was an issue in this community, so it is definitely looking at how to work with women, but also does support food security and livelihood to make sure that people have food, but they can also, earn a living from their works. And the last there is basically resilience strengthening, where we basically look at adaptations that focus on livelihood dimensions affected by climate change first. And then we also look at maybe diversifying in terms of food security, or rather in terms of village savings and loans associations. And we definitely support many communities with that as well. Specifically, I want to point out one community in Karamoja in Uganda, where in 2022 we lost over 2,000 people because of famine. And basically, it is one community of pastoralists that keep raiding cows, and that has gone on for years. It was part of the culture, but right now the dynamics have changed. The push factors have changed, that you have cattle raiding that is more of what I would term as zero grazing. Initially, they would cross over to other areas, steal from there and bring to their own community, but right now it has happened, or it does happen within their own communities. And I want to share with us a story from one of the project participants in that area. She's a widow and she's called Lloydie. And she says, because of the VSLA, that is the Village Savings and Loans Associations, basically where they come together, save up some money and then borrow money to run other businesses, and improved farming, basically climate smart agriculture practices. I am able to feed my family, pay for treatment and school fees for my children. I no longer depend on borrowing food or money from others. The project has changed my life. Last year I used my savings to buy an ox plow, which helps me to cultivate more land. This year I've bought 4 goats and I'm planning to buy an ox and build a better house. There is peace in my home because food is available and I'm no longer stressed every day. And that is just one of the so many stories, again, that we get to interface with. In terms of challenges, well, one is limited scale of adaptation, and basically many climate and resilience interventions are too small to match the speed and size of climate-related threats. Then the second challenge that we usually have is managing complexity across systems. So climate security is kind of like interrelated with so many things: livelihood, as you see, education, it does affect health, it does affect governance, so many things. So kind of addressing all these things within one project is usually very hard, and neither MCC or even our partners are capacitated enough to do all those things in terms of finances, but also in terms of the capacity of staff as well. So at times we kind of tend to break problems down because it's easy to solve them that way, and then it becomes a bit easier to handle them. And then the other bit is short-term projects versus long-term projects, problems rather. So again, we tend to have our solutions being more of what you'd call short-term. MCC does work with partners for the long-term, but at what point is long-term? We've worked in Karamoja since 2014. We've done amazing work, but the problems persist. So at what point do we say we've done enough? And then are missing links between the environment and conflict, where resilience programs may improve livelihoods but often overlook conflict drivers or environmental restoration, and environmental projects may ignore poverty and inequality that fuel both degradation and violence. So we do have that one project that is supporting to handle all these issues at the same time. The one on environmental enhancement, it's supporting environmental restoration, supporting livelihoods, addressing violence in terms of structural violence against women again. But then it is a $2 million project supported by the Canadian Food Grains Bank, and we don't have so many like that. Usually our projects may range from $20,000 to $100,000 for a 3-year project. So that can tell you the magnitude that that can handle. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless you.
Good morning. It's a snowful morning, and this is a very happy morning, especially for me, and this is first time the snow I see. So kind of remembering things will be for my future, that so that I can remember you and I can remember the day I saw it. Yeah, I would like to welcome you for my presentation. And the presentation, basically, I'll be talking about the natural disaster things and something associated with climate change, we are calling, and the context we have currently in our country, especially for Bangladesh. Bangladesh is also representing some portion of India and Myanmar. And the things actually we have right now, challenges, what kind of problems we are facing, and also as a MCC, what we are doing to combat those sort of challenges, and what is our hope. So I will be discussing on that, and this is really a good time for me, especially that I can share my information, my experiences, and it's an opportunity for me to share with you this morning. And yes, she said, I'm Arefur Rahaman, working for Mennonite Central Committee, Bangladesh. And since a long time, I'm doing my job with MCC Bangladesh. And it is an update of 6th February, so already 2 weeks been added on top of that, my countings. And also, I would like to, and happy to share pictures of my family members here. My wife, she's my daughter, and my son. And as I feel for MCC, as I preserve, deserve, follow the values and faiths of MCC in my mind, and my family also they do. And I believe they're good part of my life, actually. And Bangladesh, you know, it's a small country, actually. In the global map, you see the red area, only a very few area. The area size is actually 148,000 square kilometer, not too big. But the population, it is 177, but more than this, 177 million. And per square kilometer, it is 135 people per square kilometer. And that's how we are calling it most densely populated country in the world. And obviously, you can imagine something, how densely actually it is. And it's a good initiation. It was a good step by MCC since 1970, started its work in Bangladesh after a devastating cyclone that was huge that time. People, they did not have any preparation, and actually 500,000 people got died for that cyclone. And MCC went there to help people for relief and rehabilitation, and thought that actually the time is for MCC to help people for their socio-economic development and to teach them in many ways so that they can get a good life. MCC started some activities for food security, like introduced several new species, crop species, vegetable species in the country. Like you see the picture of cabbage. It's a picture of 1974. Like cabbage, there were carrot, cauliflower, also soybeans. Those are actually carried by MCC people here to Bangladesh, and totally MCC is pioneer for this introduction to our country. And since then, people have started to cultivate, and nowadays many people they do. And also that time, MCC found that the women group are a vulnerable group in the country in many senses, and actually they had a less hope in their family, also in the society. And MCC thought actually it is better to start work with them, and MCC taught the women group for something like skill development, like how to prepare handmade paper from the water hyacinth, how to prepare clothes from the pineapple fiber, banana fiber, how to do something handicraft. So MCC taught them, and several kinds of cottage industries, those are established by MCC in the country. And many women still are working in that cottage, and also they're getting money, they're earning money and spending money for their families, for their better life. So this is kind of initiation and example that MCC has, and MCC feel proud still for its initiation in the country. And Bangladesh, it's a I said that is many senses it is vulnerable. And if you see the rank of vulnerability, so Bangladesh has its rank actually 9th most natural disaster prone country. So if you think about top 10 countries in the world, so Bangladesh rank is 9th most. So in many senses, because of its position, we have a delta position, and our position is nearby the Bay of Bengal, and our country is surrounded by India and some parts of Myanmar, but because of lower position, we receive a lot of water from the upper side, from the Indian and Nepal side. And you know, the Nepal, they have a series of mountains, big mountains, and it is covered with snow and ice. And as the temperature is rising globally, somehow it is rising, so there is a problem that is glacier melt. It is happening more. And water is coming through India to Bangladesh and going to Bay of Bengal. And obviously, it is getting more and more and more, few millimeter, and the sea level is rising. People are facing several kinds of problems because of this. Because actually, it's a country of river. If you see the map, you see all the blue lines are our river. There are some big rivers and so many small rivers. So whole country is actually covered with rivers. So when you get rains, more rains, or when you get water from the upper side, area becomes flooded. Sometimes it is maybe for a few days, maybe for 7 days or 10 days. Sometimes for some areas it is 3 months, for some areas it is 6 months. So people have to face a lot actually. And as there is sea level rising problem and flood problem, because of sea level rising, there is a saline water intrusion from the sea to the fresh water. So people, they are losing their sources for drinking water, losing their sources for cultivation, losing their homestead, and there are many reasons there. And actually, just one story, actually 2 stories I would like to share, small stories that will attach you with the scenario.
ওগুলো এমনি শারীরিক চতুর মাসে অতিরিক্ত লবণ পানিতে গায়ে চুলকানি বেরোয়, এমনি শারীরিক সমস্যা হয়, জরাইতে টিউমার, জরাইতে ইনফেকশন, এই সমস্তগুলো হয়, কষ্টের পরে চলে।
Yeah, that's a story we wanted to share. This is a story of Shahanara. Her name is Shahanara. Because of some climate change issues, her area is salinized with seawater. Once it was fresh water, she used to catch fishes from the river and it was fresh water. But now her river is salinized. And she has no alternative option for her job because she has lost her cultivable land and other job opportunities. Only the option from the river, she can catch shrimp larvae and she has to stay a long time every day in the river to earn some money. But it has made her some vulnerable situation. I mean, she's getting some diseases like skin diseases, tumorous problem, and once from her tumorous problem, she had to dissect for some infection. She has to dissect her uterus, and that led her to a vulnerable situation, and she wasn't able to actually to continue her regular life with husband, and that's why husband was unhappy, and he got second marriage. I mean, just kind of connection. There is a issue of climate change that made her river salinize, and she was actually kind of forced to do work in the river, and it take her into a vulnerable situation and finally made a conflicting situation in the family. So how climate change is actually related with conflicts, just one example. And I would like to switch to the second story.
আমার নাম হামিদা। আমাকে বাড়ি ছিল ও নদীর ওই জায়গায়, তা চলে গেছে গ্রামে আমাদের।
কোথায় ছিল আপনার বাড়ি?
ও ওই নদীর ওই যে তার কাছে ওই জায়গায় বাড়ি ছিল, ওই জায়গায় তিনখান ঘর ছিল, পুকুর ছিল, গাছ গাছাল ছিল, তারপরে আমখানে চলে গেছে আর আমরা আবার ভিতরে বাড়ি করেছি।
ভিতর মানে এই অনেক ভিতরে?
হ্যাঁ, অনেক ভিতরে।
শুধু কি আপনাদেরই বাড়ি ছিল?
না, আমি বহুত মানুষের বাড়ি ছিল। আর এই গাজিটা ছিল, মিস্ত্রিটা ছিল, আমরা তো মিস্ত্রি হয়েছে, বহুত লোকের বাড়ি ছিল।
Actually, Hamida is displaced now totally because of climate change issues and some disaster issues. She has lost her home, and now she's staying in a place, and that is not her own land, and she's facing a lot of problems for her life actually. And both they are now MCC project participants, and MCC is teaching them for something alternative so that they don't need to go to the river every day, or they don't need to face the vulnerable situation every day. And they're teaching actually how they can combat with the disaster things. And there are some pictures like there are sea levels rising, heavy rains we have the health problem like dengue fever, also poor communications, also shrinking of job opportunities it is happening day by day, and displacement things we have, and also like the frequent flood we have, and also the river erosion we have. We have the problem like drought, job crisis, extreme cold, and extreme heat, both all the things we have actually. And all the all the associated situation are taking them into a place that we are calling climate change and conflict. And MCC is actually doing partnership with some church and church-based organization and regular NGOs, giving priorities for the landless, women, minority group, the equity group, and also youths we are engaging, also awareness we are trying to make, and also linkage we are doing, and also the gender and development things we have. And we are doing almost 16,000 households, and the red circle areas are project areas mostly. And the kind of some example like climate adaptive technologies we are teaching the people, like vermicompost, hanging garden, floating garden, 3D vegetable garden, pitcher irrigation, like duck rearing, health camps, distribution of food tree saplings, goat rearing, community seed bank, and we are doing also linkage with the people. And the challenges that we face actually, that is, we need to cover a lot of people because we are covering only a few portion, but how we can communicate for other people for MCC projects. We need to advocate the government, but it is not too easy to do that. We are in the process, or we are trying to do that. And also, always question for MCC supporters who does support MCC in many ways. So it is the time for them to think about actually the disaster things or associated with the climate change thing. Somehow it is happening, and people are recognizing some changes in their life. Yeah, this is actually all about my presentation in short. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Arefur and David. Apologies that we had to kind of move through so much information so quickly, but we're available afterwards to chat with you all if you have any more questions. We have a table back in the foyer there with a place you can sign up to receive some information from MCC's National Peace and Justice Ministries. And also, if we could just bring up I'll just show you this one slide that I have. Yeah, I think what we're also encouraging people to do during this tour is to think about what is ours to do after hearing these different stories. How are we connected with those experiences in Bangladesh and East Africa and the Sahel? How can we take action in our communities, in our churches, in our own households, or at the state level or national level? So we could talk about climate change with others. We have resources there if you follow that QR code. We also can take time to actually influence our representatives, our senators, policymakers, to keep speaking into that. What kind of vision do we have for our world, knowing that we're so interconnected and our hearts are really reaching out to so many people around the world. So we invite you to join us in taking that kind of action, or encourage you to continue the sorts of actions that you are taking. So thank you so much, and we're available at any time this morning to continue the conversation. So thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank you on behalf of all of us for coming and sharing. This has been significant efforts that we're grateful for your work. I would like to encourage us to take a few minutes actually to have some question and answer time if anyone would like. I have a message from Ken asking a question. We have been supporting work in Bangladesh with the arsenic water problems. How is the arsenic affecting your work? Is that something you'd be able to respond to?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Yes, Bangladesh is facing the arsenic problem in water, for drinking water, since a long time. And in the middle, actually, several organizations, they did work. And MCC also once did work for arsenic mitigation. And for current project cycle, we are not touching this thing because the government has some opportunity to help people on arsenic issues, actually. And government, they're testing the water sample and also helping people to install the tea well to get some good water in some places. So we have focused actually other areas. And still the arsenic problem we have. And also the report is, it is getting somewhat more and more because the water level is going down day by day. So concentration of arsenic in the water, it is getting more. And not only for, it's a threat for drinking water, also it's a threat for our other foods like rice and other things. We pump a lot of underground water to irrigate the rice field in the winter season. And that's why it is tested, and in the sample, it is proved that we have some arsenic problem in the food also, in the food chain also. So it's a problem still, but right now MCC is not doing for arsenic things at this point. And, but some other organizations, they are doing, but still it's a problem for Bangladesh. Maybe it will get more and more, but yeah, thank you.
And I don't need to take over the question and answer time. I wasn't planning to facilitate this. Are there other questions at this time that they'd like to ask? I think it is a real privilege to have David and Dr. Aref here, and would love to give them a few more minutes if we have some questions at this time. Well, I lament that Ken is not able to be here. I want to thank Ken for connecting with Danae and having this opportunity, inviting you to be able to be here. I want to confess our sin of complacency. I was struck by the reality of the countries responsible for the emissions that bring about climate change affecting the countries that are most susceptible, that have least responsibility in the climate change. And it is profound. And I think that too many of us often think we are surrounded by the safety nets where we can adapt, and are often unaware of the countries that don't have those safety nets and how much people are affected. So thank you for your work, and thank you for coming and sharing. This is profound. I prayed for you coming. I prayed that this would be impactful and insightful, and I can speak for myself that I've been moved by your work. So thank you again, and look forward to hearing from you, David, also during the service as you bring the message. And it is 10:20. I say we can still plan to have our service start at 10:30. So we'll have prelude start momentarily. So feel free to take a break in 10 minutes.